So, sourdough starter. And before we get started, let's talk about it for a quick second. A lot of people think it's a hard process, but it's actually quite easy. Sourdough starter is only made from two ingredients, which is water and flour. It's a 7-day process, and after those 7 days, it lives on forever and ever. All you have to do is feed it. Sourdough starter is basically yeast, but in its natural form, which is called a leaven. You can use this to make all sorts of breads, including pizza. After trial and error, in my opinion, I have mastered how to do the sourdough starter. I got the water temperatures where they need to be, the proper flours, and when to feed it. As far as the flour goes, you don't have to use the ones I use, but after trial and error, the flours I use have worked better for me. So now I'm going to show you how you can also master a sourdough starter. So now let's get started. On the items we'll be needing. So you will be needing a food scale. You actually do need a food scale because you want to make sure you weigh down everything to where it needs to be. You'll also be needing a thermometer. You need a thermometer to make sure you get the water temperature down to where they need to be. You'll also be needing a glass jar. These have to be glass, you guys. A mason jar works perfectly, but if you don't have a mason jar, all you really have to do is make sure you don't squeeze on the lid too tight because you need excess air to escape. So now for the flours, you're going to use organic dark rye flour, and you're going to use organic unbleached all-purpose flour. These have to be organic. The all-purpose needs to be unbleached or else it won't rise properly. The brands of flour I use, they're actually from a little culinary store that's in my area, but you can go ahead and use Bob's Red Mill. Those are actually some pretty good flours, and go ahead and just use those. And I want to emphasize on the organic stuff because you want a good leaven. Remember, you guys, you don't want any cheap products because you want a good bread. And this flour, you guys, come on, it's cheap already. So go ahead and spend a couple extra dollars for a good product. So now you're going to start out by weighing out your jar. As you can see, my jar weighs 462, and you want to make sure you write this down. So now go ahead and put in there only 100 grams of dark rye flour. We're only using dark rye flour for the first day. If you pour a little bit too much, just go ahead and remove some. And now go ahead and weigh out 150 grams of filtered water. And yes, it has to be filtered. You don't want none of that nasty tap water stuff. So now that you weighed out your water, what you're going to do is warm it up until it's 95 degrees. It should only take a couple of seconds. So go ahead and use your thermometer to make sure you get the temperature where it needs to be. So now that you've made sure your water has 95 degrees, just go ahead and pour it into your jar. Now go ahead and give that a thorough mix to make sure you want to incorporate everything properly. Once it's nice and smooth like this, you are done. Now go ahead and just place on your lid on loosely. Do not tighten that lid or else your glass jar will pop. So now a quick recap of day 1. We did 100 grams of dark rye flour and 150 grams of water at 95 degrees. You want to make sure you write this down so you don't forget what day you are on. So now that we're on day 2, we're going to commence the first day of our feeding process. Feeding is basically just removing some of the mature starter and feeding it new flour. So what we're going to do is we're only going to leave 70 grams of the mature starter in the jar. So it's basically the weight of your jar plus 70 grams. That's why I told you guys at the beginning to make sure you write all of this down. As you can see here, 462 plus 70 is 532. That's how much my jar weighed. So now that we've left 70 grams of the mature starter in our jar, we're going to start weighing out our water. We're going to weigh out 115 grams of water, and we're going to warm this up to 95 degrees again. So now for our flours, we're only going to be weighing out 50 grams of dark rye flour. So there you go. There's the 50 grams. And 50 grams of organic unbleached all-purpose flour. So all in total, you should have 100 grams of flour. So now go ahead and throw in your flour into your jar. So now go ahead and throw in your water and make sure it's at 95 degrees. If your water is too hot, you're totally going to kill the yeast and this won't ferment properly. So now go ahead and give that a thorough mix again. Make sure that you don't leave no dry flour unmixed. So once you're done mixing, just go ahead and place your lid. And now a quick recap of day 2. 50 grams dark rye flour, 50 grams unbleached all-purpose flour, 115 grams of water, and 70 grams of your mature starter. So now we are on day 3. As you can tell, mine has had a nice rise, but if yours doesn't look like this, just go ahead and keep going. And now you're going to do the exact same thing you did yesterday, but now it's day 3. So here you go. I'll put it down on the screen for you. So now we are on day 4. You're going to be doing the exact same thing you did yesterday. The only difference now is you're going to go with only 100 grams of water. So here you go. Here's day 4. I'm going to write it for you on the screen. So now we are on day 5. On day 5, you're going to do the exact same thing you did yesterday. So 70 grams of your mature starter, 50 grams dark rye flour, 50 grams unbleached all-purpose flour, and 100 grams of water. So here it is. I wrote it down on the screen for you. So now we are on day 6. On day 6, you're doing the exact same thing you did yesterday, but now we're going to reduce the amount of starter to 50 grams. So 50 grams dark rye flour, 50 grams unbleached all-purpose flour, 100 grams of water, and 50 grams mature starter. So here it is. I wrote it down on the screen for you. So now we are on day 7. This is the last day of its process. You're doing the exact same thing you did yesterday. Difference now is you're going to reduce the amount of starter to 25 grams. So 25 grams mature starter, 50 grams dark rye flour, 50 grams unbleached all-purpose flour, and 100 grams of the water. So now, after day 7, your sourdough starter should look like this. But if it doesn't, don't worry, keep going. So now, moving forward, you're going to repeat the last step forever and ever and ever to keep your sourdough starter alive. If you don't want to feed it every day, that's totally fine. You can put it in the fridge and feed it once a week. And there you go, you guys. This is your full guide on how to make a perfect sourdough starter. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment to see what other items you want to see get done.